Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and today was supposed to be a live, but my software for Restream keeps failing, and hopefully I didn't just do a negative plug for Restream. But so here's what I'm going to tell you. This is going to be on YouTube as a podcast. I'm going to have slides, and if you'd like to go follow the slides, which you probably really don't need to, they're just kind of more for talking points today. You're welcome to go over to Superbrand Publishing, our YouTube channel, and if not, just listen and have fun. And we've got a couple guests here today that are going to talk for a minute before we get going, and then we'll jump right into the planning portion. So are you raising your hand, Chris?
Yes. I was just going to ask everybody to please mute if you're not talking because of the feedback.
Okay. All right. You have a headset on. I don't, so I don't get it. So let's jump in to Chris Johnson and Allie B. Berthume. Did I say it right? I never say. That's why I always call her Allie B. They have a challenge going on this month. They're going to talk a little bit about it. And even though I know this is not coming out till the 24th as a podcast, you guys jump in anytime because it's all about writing. And one of you guys take it, talk about it, tell them where to go, and then we'll jump into the planning.
Well, this is our LinkedIn October Quest Booktacular. It's intended to be a very fun writing challenge for anyone who's either thinking about writing a book or is in it and maybe is muddled up or just wants to bust some writer blocks.
Okay, good. And Allie just put that in the link. So I hope I can grab it and put it in the podcast when I'm done. But you guys can go sign up. I know you guys have a lot of stuff planned. Chris, flash us that background. When I got on, there was such a dark background going on here.
Okay.
So share that with the crowd. For those of you on the podcast, she has a really spooky skeleton background. There we go. Okay, so we got it for the spectacular. So thanks, guys. Allie, did you want to say anything, or did you just show up to look cute?
Look cute. No, I would say that what's really great about the challenge is that it's super simple. It's very easy. You just show up for the day somewhere along your path, whatever you're doing. You just pop into the group for a couple minutes. You get the post for the day. You complete the daily challenge or you read the daily post whenever it fits in with your schedule. So it's not like you got to show up live. It's not like you have to be committed, to a certain hour of the day for 31 days straight. Like you're fitting it in as you can. And it's not just about the writing. It's also about the education. We've got a spotlight post in there where we're sharing about our favorite people in the industry or our favorite podcasts. We're talking about resources in there. There's time for people to ask questions of experts, right? Like Chris and I are in there to serve people. So it's much more than just writing. It's like the full 360.
Very good. And if you guys missed their scams podcast, you definitely should go over and check that out on YouTube. It's under Allie B's channel. And it was a really fun 1-hour event where we told you about all the scams in publishing and book development and all that. So let's get going. All righty. So I'm talking about planning today, and I'm talking about planning for a reason. We are getting to, can you guys all see that? Let's see, slideshow from the beginning. Can you all see the platform planning for thought leaders on there? Okay, I see Christine saying yes, so I'm going to assume you all can see it too. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're in October. As many of you probably realized, we're running into a little tight money position in the economy. So it is more important than ever to be able to plan for next year, because it's not just about the things you have to do to build the platform, but it's also about, are you going to have those dollars to allocate? Where is it going to be important? Because one thing that people who haven't been in this position before with their own business don't understand is, even though there's that, I don't have a lot of cash to do marketing, that's the time when you have to do the most marketing. because people are going to want to build a relationship with you on a deeper level before they ever part with their cash. And that's just the reality. They're either looking for a bargain or they're looking for someone that they really, really trust. And hopefully all of you guys, by planning, you'll be that person that they trust. So according to the University of Oregon study, businesses that plan grow 30% faster than businesses do not. And we have run into a lot over the years where people don't do this planning in advance. And I can always tell when people are doing their planning, they buy their 2024 stuff in October, November, December. They're deciding what they need to learn for next year, and they're ponying up the money. I can also tell the people who didn't plan because they're trying to buy a year plan in January or February because they haven't sat down and really taken a good look at their business and plan. So that's why it is so important, especially as, things start to slow down a little bit. So what's your plan for 2024? What's your budget? What is your 6 to 12 month goal or vision? What needs to be developed in the new year? And how will you break that down into action steps? One of the things that happens a lot, and I know the people in traffic school that are here know this, is you get this big juicy goal and you say, I want to do X, and you have no idea all of the little things you have to learn to get to X. And I'm going to use Christine and Jeff here for a minute, because Jeff is like the best VA for Christine on the planet, even though it's his night job, not his day job. They just embarked on getting an email set up, a lead magnet for an event, and we had to do it really quickly. And so there was a lot to get done. And I think surprising to you guys probably how much had to be broken down and created to get that done. Christine just spoke at a big event in Italy. And so we had to get it all done in a month. So, but most of the time when we're in the grind of our daily work, getting it put into our schedule while we're managing a staff, putting out fires, bringing in clients, because most of us are the face of our business and the rainmakers, and getting our work done, this kind of gets pushed to the side, and it can't be pushed to the side. So the first thing you have to sit down and look at is look over your last year. What were your expenditures? What do you need to trim at all? Because some people do need to trim. I know we're going through and we're trimming things here and there. But also, what is your budget for next year? What does your revenue look like? And I know it's a little bit harder for coaches because we don't know, but if you have a revenue goal, then you have to step up into the lead gen that matches that role. So you really need to look at how much do you need to spend to keep growing your business when everything, the economic flashers are going off saying, no, nobody's growing. So you have to figure out how you're going to continue to move through that. The next are, what are your 6 to 12 months goals? There is, and Christine is really good at this psychology stuff, there is a mind-hand connection. When you actually write down those goals and keep them in a place where you can see them and make sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely, that's when you're going to start breaking these big juicy goals down into action steps. So you're doing a little bit a day and making sure that they're getting done. And just like, Allie and Chris as book developers and editors, they know that because they know that a book that's brought in and written, if you've ever gone to those weekend events where it's write a book in a weekend, not the best books. So you do have to sit down and plan the book out and then write accordingly every day. Okay, so this is where people start to get in a lot of trouble is you don't know what you don't know. And what happens is you put this big juicy goal together, but you don't break it down into all the steps. So then as you start to do that, you're getting overwhelmed. So I'm going to take into just something, if you're doing a list build, what's your lead magnet? What's your call to action? What's the copy? Do you already have a mail server? Does the mail server need to be set up? What does your drip campaign look like? What will the content will serve your general list after they get out of the drip campaign? And where will you lead them next? That's a lot of information to get in on one day and say, okay, I'm going to do that in the month of February. all by myself in between everything else I have to do. So it is really important to break it down into action steps. And I'll go into an example at the end. I actually had a client probably 2 years ago who in the middle of their content creation announced that they had recorded podcasts, but they had no idea what to do with them next. And that would have been one of those things where when you decided to put a podcast together, you should have sat down and planned out, where do I put it? Where does it go? What do I have to do to get it up onto SoundCloud or whatever you're using? So it is really important to break it down into steps. It's also important because as you guys get into digital marketing, you've probably noticed every platform is $20. So you really have to look closely at, do I need that mail server? Yes, of course you do. Do I need that extra AI? Do I need all those other accoutrements that will make my life easier? What can I do by hand? What do I need to spend $20? If you're someone like me who's totally digital, I probably have $350 a month in digital platforms that I use between project management and email list and landing pages and all the things we do, website. So it's really important as you break those down too. Probably means there's going to be some tech you have to use to learn as well. All right. So next, so where do you start? And this is always hard to know where to start with what you want to put together. So the first thing is evaluate your past performance. So take a look over the last year or the last 2 years at what your goals were, what you accomplished, what you didn't accomplish. And this is something you really have to open your heart and mind about. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times we start looking in that past, what we did do, what we didn't do, and we start beating ourselves up instead of saying, okay, here's an opportunity to move forward. So it really is an exercise where you take some time away, take a half hour, sit in a corner, go out in nature, whatever is going to really put you in a relaxing, meditative state, and start journaling about it, how you would like it to look. So sometimes I will get into a mode where I'm out and I'm doing that, and I'll start thinking, why didn't I get that done? This makes no sense. So I was saying about the open your heart and mind. Don't get into a space where you're beating yourself up, where you're very calm about it, and you're able to really objectively sit down and journal about what it is that you didn't get done, maybe why you didn't get done, how you can readjust a schedule so all of it does. And decide how you want the outcomes of what you want to create will feel. What I started to say before I went off last time was sometimes I will sit down and I'll write a letter to myself about, this is what I'm looking for. This is my goal. This is how I want it to feel when I've accomplished this goal. And that's really motivating in that process. You can also sit down and write a letter if you're a coach about how you want your clients to feel from the outcomes of what you're doing. Because if you're very service minded, a lot of times you're not as concerned about how you feel about it. You're more concerned about how those clients feel and how you can keep them coming back for more. So the looking back part, the evaluation, look back over the last year. If you had goals from last year, take a look at them, kind of tick off what you accomplished. One of the things that somebody told me, and there was big agreement in the group last time we did this, was they put their goals together and then they shove them in a drawer. And then, they'll open the drawer in about June and they'll go, oh, I haven't done any of this. So whatever you do, when you write down those goals and you're evaluating, be sure you put it on the wall, or be sure you put it in a daily journal where you're doing like a 10-10, what you want to manifest. That was one of the reasons we did Author Alchemy, because that created that journal book, because that really helped me pinpoint what I was manifesting and remind me every day. But the other part of the 10 is not just that you want to manifest, but you also want to write down every day what you're grateful for, because it's really hard to manifest when you're not grateful. So evaluation, first step. Your heart and mind, definitely look back with compassion at what you've done and where you want to go. I digital marketing is difficult, and I'm just going to call out Linda here because I know she's kind of frustrated with it at this time. It's hard to learn. She doesn't really understand, and I know she gets frustrated sometimes. But she's also really good about being compassionate and loving herself in the process. And I invite all of you to do that as well. This is hard work. And like the very first time you put a webinar together, chances are that everything's not going to go as planned.
Linda, what was your question?
I have a question. My podcast, Juliet. Everybody's inviting me to do podcasts. I'm very popular. What do I do with the podcasts? I have them on my website, a media page.
Okay, let's get to that at the end. Okay, so I can get, especially because I'm going up and down here.
All right.
Definitely look at everything you're doing with compassion, because a lot of times that digital marketing does not work the first time. You have to go back in and tweak it. Or if you're doing a webinar, just like I'm doing this today, tech may fail in the middle of it. So you never know what's going to come up. So you always have to, kind of do this with a sense of humor and understand that you just had a learning experience and next time it'll be better. And then journaling connects us with our planning, our storytelling, and it helps the decision-making part of our brain. So that's why it is so important to really honor that brain, hand connection. It also reduces stress and anxiety. So, if you're feeling like if you're feeling overwhelmed or you're not getting stuff done as quickly as you like, sit down and do some journaling about that. And again, be compassionate with yourself when you do that. And then how do you want to feel? Do you want to be in action? Does it create, when you're in action, the feeling that you want? For a lot of people, there's going to be some frustration. Turn it around and flip it and say, this is a learning experience. I don't need to be frustrated. I will figure it out and it will happen. As long as, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm mad and I'm frustrated, nothing works. If I take a step away and, go for a hike or just deep breathe and come back to it a little while later, it all feels kind of new and I'm refreshed and not so frustrated for the process. So understand that as well. Congruence. And I think I did this wrong, but you have to be congruent with what you're manifesting. So I think this is actually intention plus action equals manifestation. Is that right, Chris? I think I did it wrong last time. But you can't just write all of this down on a piece of paper and not take the action. There aren't any like digital marketing fairies that are going to come out there and do this for you. So you have to be in action with what you're trying to manifest. And I'm going to change that from trying to manifest what you are manifesting. You have to have it all in alignment to be able to get it done. The platform, it all starts with, and this is one of the things I was talking about, once you decide your goals, start filling in the missing pieces of your platform. So this was the one I was actually talking about where we got into the content development and all of a sudden this team of women told me, oh, we've recorded 4 podcasts, but we don't know what to do with them. That was an actual coaching call. And so then we broke down the steps. Okay, you have to go over, if you're going to do it yourself, and buy SoundCloud. Now you have to go over and, start your YouTube channel. So there were a lot of different steps and they didn't think it through when they did it. And what ended up happening is once we went through all the steps, they said, we don't have time to do that. So they dropped the whole idea, but they dropped the idea after they had planned, recorded, invited guests for podcasts. So there was a lot of wasted time in there because they didn't think the whole thing through. And there's no shame in asking what the steps are because you don't know what you don't know. And, that's part of the problem. It's better to ask and get some guidance than to muddle through and end up wasting your time and doing the wrong thing. So determine the steps you need to do. So I'm going to take an example of like if you wanted to do a monthly live stream, which I would encourage you guys to do because a live stream is a little bit different than if you remember the old days when we did webinars and the webinars, you couldn't talk to the host. Well, now as a host, I prefer to set it up as a meeting. in Zoom, because now I can talk to you guys. Linda just asked a question in the middle of what we're doing. If we had been doing a webinar, some of you would have jumped off because you had questions and you didn't think they'd be answered. So look at those live stream trainings as a way to build relationships. So if you look at it, if you were going to put this on your list for next year, you'd need to set up the software. You'd need to learn how to set up Zoom for registration. You might go to Restream or StreamYard and connect that to the social media where you want to go live. Then you need to write copy. Then you need a banner. Then you need to put out invites, and you have to figure out how people will find out about this event that you're having on live stream. And then once you're done with it, how will you repurpose it? Because if you just done a whole hour of content, you're just not going to leave it there just on as a 1 hour, because people have no attention span. So you might have a plan to put it through Opus and take clips out to promote with. So there's a lot there where if you lay out those, you could literally do one a day. You could set up your software. You could set up your Zoom meeting the next day. You could set up your Restream and connect, or StreamYard, whatever you're using. You can write that copy, put it back in Zoom, put the registration out, and start posting on social media. So you could actually break all of that down into probably a week to 2 week planning for that event. And then after that, it's going to get a lot easier. So literally, Nina Froreep is going to be on next month. I had her write her own copy. I had her choose the own image for her banner. All I did was send it over, have it made. I'm using her copy. I set up the Zoom link, and we're ready to go for next month. So as you get better at it and do it for a couple of months, it's also going to get much easier. It's not going to be like a whole week project. It'll be, maybe an hour or two. So the practice definitely helps as well once you get the steps in place. And then identify their goals. Are they realistic and measurable? So KPIs is their return on investment. For those of you who've done a book with us, I'm very transparent about you're probably not going to get your ROI from your book. It'll be from what you sell after your book or the connections you make with your book. So keep in mind, if you're putting something together that you're going to release a book next year, what is your next step? How are you going to sell it? I know everybody on this call knows that the distributors are taking 55% now, and the cost of paper has gone up. So what are you going to do to ditch that middleman and make more money with this book? And that's really the whole key of what we're doing with the magazine next year, is putting together those strategies that allow you to get out there and sell those books yourself and keep that 55% in your pocket. So, but also be realistic about what you're doing. I remember when I first started social media, I was like, I'm going to get 1,000 followers on Twitter. Well, I got maybe 70, but that was like a month goal because it looked really easy. So be sure that number one, you have a spreadsheet and you're measuring, and number two, that you have those realistic goals. And a lot of times the part that authors hate is the analytics, but you have to do it because you don't know if something's working unless you keep the analytics. And we have an engineer on the phone, so I bet he knows a lot about analytics. So Christine's lucky her nighttime VA will do the analytics for her. But those analytics are important because you want to take a look at what's working and what's not working, and what's working you want to do more of. So it is very important to keep track of this. And then ongoing actions. Have a master list of the tasks to keep you on track. So once you've established all that setup, then you can use something like Monday.com. I use Notion, and I love it. Once I got it set up, and I have a great guy on Fiverr who set most of mine up. Once I got that done, now I can keep track of the tasks every month. What are the deadlines? So like for next month, I was just mentioning Nina. I had Nina give me all of her materials for next month's talk by the end of September. So that was a task on my calendar. I got everything in the door. Now the banner's being made. We're setting it up on Zoom next week. So we'll have links. Our marketing's getting ready. So when you really have something like that, a good production setup, you'll be able to keep everything on task, including yourself, because you'll have that list of things to do every day to keep you going. And then here's probably the most important part. And Chris and I just had a talk about this before the show started. How will you show up? You have to show up and be present to complete all of this. And I find sometimes that I work with people, and that's what Chris and I were talking about. I have a book right now. I can't get the author to sit down and be present. And the whole program is a mess. And it's because not showing up to the weekly meetings, I'm too busy. For all of you who've done a book, you know how intensive it is. You need to be present. You need to bring your full 100% attention to the table to get through some of those tasks. So be sure as you're doing this that you show up and you're present as well. And you're just not kind of, as my dad used to say, half-assing things. So part of this process is conscious planning. So some things to really consider when you're planning out what you want to create next year. First of all, does it feel fun? A lot of times this doesn't feel fun at first, and we put it off. How many of you guys have read Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy? Nobody? Oh my gosh. Best book ever. He actually has a plan to how you take those things that you hate to do and put them on your calendar and get them done first thing in the morning, first thing you do. So it doesn't get out of hand. Then you move to the really fun stuff. I do that with my books. I hate doing accounting. It's just not my thing. But every Friday morning, first thing I do when I sit down is I do the week's accounting. I look at the credit cards. I reconcile everything. So it's done. It's out of the way. The second thing to consider is, does it give you an opportunity to grow? If it doesn't feel like it's going to help your business grow, probably not something to do. Is it aligned with your core values? That's really important too, because a lot of times that will put something into a category where it just doesn't feel aligned, and then we won't do it. I'll give you an example. I had a client this year where we wanted her to do a video series. She has a very robust, she's a doctor. She has a pretty robust business working with the elderly. She didn't feel good on camera, and she ended up not doing it. She did with a series of ebooks instead. I don't think it was quite as effective, because if you're going to be my doctor, I want to see your face. I just don't want to read you online. I want to see if you're a trustworthy person. So, make sure that whatever you do is aligned with your value, but also think about how your audience is going to receive it as well. Will it move you towards your vision? If you have that big vision, then you have to look at, will this individual piece move me closer to that? The problem with digital marketing is there are so many shiny objects out there, and sometimes we'll get off track with the latest and greatest thing. I know I've done it. I was on a platform, brand new video Twitter platform, and I was spending too much time there and not enough time on lead generation. So really try to avoid those shiny objects, look at them and think about, will that bring me something long-term? One of those things that I consider a shiny object was back in the day when we had Facebook groups. And, we were putting content in every day, and people were just getting there taking stuff for free. So it wasn't, even though I did it, it wasn't really something that moved me towards my vision. Is the opportunity cost worth the likely gain? That's where you have to sit down and think about, will this get me more clients? Will this get me more visibility? And what is it going to cost me to do that, especially when we're on a tighter budget? Do you have the capacity to execute? I can tell you that client I just talked about, who is not being present to the whole process that we're putting together, she doesn't have the capacity to execute. This probably wasn't the right time for the project. So really think about that as well. If you're Christine Silverstein and you're flying all over the world to these great events and promoting yourself, you may not have time to do some of that smaller stuff with it. Maybe time to get a VA if you don't have the time to execute it yourself. That might be when you decide, I'm going to bring somebody on to do this for me. And is the energy around it expansive or constrictive? If it doesn't feel good, you're not going to do it. So don't take it on. It has to make you feel like, your energy is good. You're growing, might be a little tough, but coming out the other side, it's going to be better. Those of you who are on here who've written a book, you probably know know that it didn't go as smoothly as planned. And that's sort of going to be the up level when you're doing this planning as well. I always feel like the universe says, yes, of course you can do that, but you're going to have to heal something. So all of a sudden you have this big obstacle in your way and you're like, what's going on? You said we could do this. So, be aware of that as well. A lot of times when you're being expansive with your energy in your life, things get thrown in your way that you don't necessarily expect. I'm gonna call poor Linda out again. Linda actually wrote a book. She started publishing, and then she sold her place, found a new place, construction. Like, she really got a lot of stuff thrown in her way, but she got it done. She came back to the table when it was all over and got it done. So I think that's a great example of having obstacles thrown in your way when you're trying to grow. So Platform Planning Palooza, and I'll take your questions in a minute. We have a course that we did last year, and it was a $2,000 course. And this year I wanted to make it so people could work it on their own. So we have a workbook, we have worksheets, and then you get 2 1-hour sessions to sit down and figure out the steps with me, where you want to go and what the steps actually are to what you want to do. And we are doing that package this year. Oh, it was $14.97 last year. I'm sorry. This year, if you use the discount code PLAN 2023, it's $297. And you can go right to platformplanningpalooza.com. You can grab that. We have the worksheets in there. We explain how to use them. And then what I'd like to do is a session at the beginning where we discuss those goals. What are the steps? What do you do? And then the second one is let's review them. Let's see if they're realistic. What do we need to adjust, and how are we going to do this? So it really is something, if you don't know what you don't know, this might be something that will help you figure out those steps and streamline it so you can get all your work done and be able to accomplish the growth steps you need to as well. So, Linda, you had a question. Did she unmute?
Yes, I do have a question. I have been invited to do a number of podcasts. I must have about 8 or 9 on my media page on my website. What do I do with the podcasts?
Well, first of all, most podcasts you're on should have materials that they give you, promotional materials. So you take those materials and you promote the heck out of it. So make sure that you have your content calendar together. I would go out. Usually when I'm a guest on somebody else's, I will promote at least once a month. I'll go in hard at first. So it just came out. Go check this out. Write the social media post, provide the link that the host's given you, any graphics over on social media. And then the second part is, as you maintain your content calendar, put those on in different places. A really great place to put a lot of these after you've initially promoted them is that week after, the week of Thanksgiving, the week of Christmas, the week of spring vacation, because if you have your calendar set up correctly, you can take that week off. You don't have to do anything. You can promote other people's work and post it over on Social Bee or whatever platform you use to just go off automatically, and you're done. And so you can spend your week after Christmas when everybody's off and they're on the internet playing around, promoting other people's stuff. So that is. The other thing you can do is, it's really great if you have your own content platform, if you have your own YouTube channel, is when you negotiate, when people ask you on, reciprocate. Say, hey, can we do a YouTube swap or a pod swap? Can I interview you? Because that gives you content to release as well. And literally the interviews, you guys, most of you have done them with me, I think with the exception of Amanda Beth. You literally open up Zoom and go. And with the exception of today, normally I don't even edit. I'm going to have to go through today's because we went down so much, but you just go over, you write a little copy, you put it up on your YouTube channel. And now you've promoted their stuff too.
Is there a special way to get people to the YouTube channel? Is that like through social media? Check out my YouTube channel like that?
Absolutely. And if you were on last month's call, Fran Asaro shared TubeBuddy. go over and get TubeBuddy, because I believe there was a discount code if you had under 1,000 followers. And TubeBuddy, Fran is very open to helping people. You know, she's the senior tuber, and with the exception of Allie and Amanda Beth, we're all senior people here. So you know, she's more than happy to help people. And, you know, you guys probably have her contact from last time when she was on. So she can actually show you how to do those end cards. She can show you how to put playlists together. I think we're having her on soon. She's figured out how to do memberships on there as well. So there's there. You can also go over to Rumble and share them, because Rumble's a completely different audience and it's very easy to upload. Probably, I would say, easier than YouTube for the upload. So you're going to catch a different crowd over there too.
Very good. Thank you so much, Juliet.
You're welcome. And the other thing you can do, but you have to do it with the permission of the host, because it's always their content, is ask them, hey, I did this with Allie B when we did the event with Allie B last month, is I said, hey, do you mind if I run this through Opus and get some clips? So you can't take the interview, like I cannot take the interview from the event that Allie B did. I can't post it on YouTube because she did, and they'll take us both down if we have duplicate content. But what I can do is run it through Opus and get some good clips to promote it. And those Opus will create those shorts. So we'll have, 30-second, 60-second, 90-second clips to drive traffic over to that person's, but definitely get their permission first. And congratulations.
The permission of the person you're clipping.
Exactly. Yeah. AI is a wonderful thing, but we don't want to violate someone else's copyright. So definitely get permission to do that. And congratulations on getting so many podcasts. That's amazing. Linda's gotten herself, you've gotten a couple book signings in bookstores in New York City too, haven't you?
I have one scheduled on the 18th, and I hope to have another soon after. I have to approach them. But I'm waiting for this to be successful, please.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question, if I can go. You said that Rumble has a different population. So what is that population versus other platforms?
Okay, so here's the deal. Rumble is free speech. It tends to have a little bit more of a conservative audience, but that thing we had in 2020, how about if I just say it that way? That thing we had in 2020, if you got on and you said, the way to really kick this is to be healthy, do things to boost your immune system, get out, don't be overweight, exercise, fresh air, all the things that we learned growing up were how we take care of ourselves and our immune system. If you went on YouTube and said that, your channel would be deleted or you would be demonetized. That wouldn't happen over on Rumble. So you can get away with a little bit more over on Rumble than you can on YouTube. And I believe that Rumble, I'm looking for a Rumble expert actually for the magazine. Rumble is connected to what's called locals. And with locals and Rumble, you can demonetize right away. And people that are over there are saying that their audiences are much bigger because they're not being shadow banned. So you can say what you want to say over there. There's probably some conspiracy stuff, but there's probably a lot of good stuff too that's not being allowed on YouTube. And you can monetize over on Rumble too. From my understanding, there are also, and I know that I'm a part of them, but I don't know how to set it up yet. There are also places where you can put a paywall. So let's say, I'm trying to think of somebody, Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin has a paywall. So you go over, I think Glenn Greenwald does too. You pay $50 a month and you get live content, but behind the paywall, you also get some extra content as well. So you could probably monetize a little bit more over there as well. Linda, how did you approach the bookstores did I answer your question, Christine, before I go to Jeff?
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Linda, we want to know your secret to how you got into the bookstores in Manhattan, because even though you're in Brooklyn, Jeff and Christine are in New Jersey, but they go to New York quite a bit.
So I emailed the person in charge. So one bookstore is Powerhouse on 8th. I looked online, I got the email address, and I emailed the head of events. Then I spoke to the person in the store. Then I emailed both of them and asked them different particulars. And it's funny, in one bookstore, I just called and got the owner on the phone, and she gave me a 40% discount. Where I'm having the book signing, he's doing a 50-50 consignment split. So I email and I call them on the phone. That's how I did it, and establish a rapport. Mm-hmm. And I have emailed a number of people, called a number of shops, and I will continue to do that. Have I answered your question, Jeffrey?
Yeah, good.
Juliet, Allie has something to share.
Oh, Allie, please share. You may unmute.
I may unmute. I'm not just here to look cute. When it comes to podcasting, so one thing that I've tried this past year to try to get more leverage out of the podcasts is to essentially transcribe the conversations, look for patterns and trends and themes, and create micro blog posts out of the podcast that are like no more than like 500 words, focuses on a very specific element of the conversation, and then says to hear this and more. And then you can put in whatever other topics or focuses were covered. Go catch this really fabulous conversation with so-and-so over on, insert link. So, you're really promoting their podcast, but it's your interview, and you're refreshing the content without just like putting a transcription of the conversation onto your blog. But you're getting new blog content. You're using the things you already said. So it's not like you're having to sit there and like come up with brand new ideas for what to say, because you already said the things in the interview. I've also had like interns or team members pull quotes or snippets, things that I said from the podcast, and just do like a quick little graphic that's with my quote, but then say, this is where I said it. I said it over here, part of this conversation, and putting that, onto social. And if you're using some sort of social media scheduler that has the ability to just load things up and have them roll out, having, like Juliet had said earlier, like if you position them around certain times where people are more likely to be listening, you can have them scheduled in advance so that you know that they're going out kind of regularly, instead of just like posting it once and then never posting it again. Like get as much leverage as you can.
Did she go someplace? I think she went
like
out.
That. Like if you are speaking about bravery and everything's about bravery, then focus on that thing so you can keep posting it repeatedly.
Yeah. And I find too, using that, like those periods that I talked about, even sometimes during the summer, because people are on vacation, they're sitting on a beach someplace, listening to a podcast, reading a book. Those create situations where you don't have to create as much content either. And to add to what Allie said, I actually take the transcription from a podcast, even if I've been on someone else's. And I will put it in ChatGPT and use it in my newsletter as well. So the LinkedIn newsletter, all you need is a short little blurb, a banner, and a headline. And I think when I post my LinkedIn newsletter, it's literally 1 or 2 paragraphs and then the link to what you're listening to. So you could actually use, with their permission, other people's podcast as content. And, that's a great way for you not to have to create and repurpose your own. And I don't think there's anybody out there who doesn't appreciate when you're out promoting their stuff. So you're also being a good power partner and being in service of the people who are helping promote and going to put you out there as well. So anybody else before we go? Amanda Beth, you're awfully quiet today. Ask us a question.
I have something to comment on that I learned on my trip to Italy at the nursing conference. There was a young Chinese nurse who came to present. She did have some language challenges, but she was very energetic, and she presented on something other than the topic of my book, which is working with children, teens, and young adults. But the other element of my Operation Heal program that I promoted in my book that Kristen's familiar with. And she presented on wound healing after a procedure, after a shunt was put in. And so I told her, listen, my book is going to help you, to use imagery to heal. And so she connected with me and finally I convinced her to buy my book, right? And she was impressed that I signed it in script rather than, pen. She said, where did you learn that? Because she was only familiar with print, to read because she was Chinese. But she said, when did you start learning that? What is it called? I said, it's penmanship. And she was so surprised, there was such a thing. But what I learned was that you can promote beyond. Somebody might pick up something from your book that you didn't really expect. And that wasn't exactly what I was presenting. But the moment came and I was so thrilled, because I also asked her about COVID and what it's like in her country, because here nurses are committing suicide, they're drug addicts, they're quitting the profession by the thousands. And she said that's not happening in her country, even though they had that challenge with COVID, right, and their own vaccine. She said, that's not happening where I live, in China. So I learned a lot from that, beyond what I thought. So I'm just putting that out to the people presenting their book and their ideas. It might go beyond what you thought.
Yeah, Christine, that's one of the things we did when we put the quizzes together as lead magnets. You make certain assumptions about your audiences, and sometimes those quizzes will flip that around, and you'll start to see patterns. And it's like, I had no idea these people needed so much help in this area. That's one of the things that initiated traffic school for us, is we kept seeing over and over how poorly people were doing on the author ready quiz. And so we started to put education together about that. Jeff, you have a question about, did Linda make money from the bookstores? She hasn't done it yet, but I'm going to just caution you on the bookstores. Go in and make a deal with them of some sort. It sounds like Linda did, because one of the things that happens with bookstores is when they order in the books, if they don't sell them all, they're going to return them, and you're going to get a big bill for those returns. We just had an author who insisted on a Barnes & Noble signing, and they returned 38 copies of each book. She had 2 books. And we get charged back not only for the royalties, but for the book printing. So she got a pretty hefty bill from it. So be careful to go overboard. What I really do recommend, and we've had a couple authors that have done this, is go to the spiritual bookstores and offer it as part of the workshop. So they're making money on the workshop, and the book is part of it, and you bring the book with you and hand it out there, because then they're making money on the workshop, not the book. And you get to walk away with your copies that you didn't sell. So just another one of those little things. The book industry has you coming and going. So, all right, you guys, is that it? Thank you so much for coming today. And you know what? If Platform Planning Palooza is something you want to do, go over and grab it and get started. Schedule your appointment and let's figure out what your goals are for next year, because it is really important to get all that, laid out in advance so you can make time for it. So thank you. And thank you for weathering I think I just gave you a great example of how tech doesn't work in your favor sometime. And I didn't freak out. I can guarantee you the first time it happens to you, you will freak out. But it's happened to me so many times now that it is what it is. So, all right, you guys, see you later.
Thanks, Juliet.
Thank you.
Bye.